What we want to talk about now is the coalitions that we're working to build, whatever the political environment, to build that political will to be successful in our work. And I'm thrilled to be here today to launch the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign. So when I first came to, back to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, when I first came and reintroduced myself to all of you at the forum, I talked about my belief in the importance of expanding our coalition to go beyond affordable housing and community development advocates to be able to achieve our goals. And of course, I was inspired by, as many of you have been, and driven by Cushing Dolbear's words that housing is too important to leave to housers alone. So since that time, I've been really fortunate to have worked with other similarly minded leaders like Nan Roman from the National Alliance to End Homelessness and Barbara Sard from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, like Ali Solis from Make Room, and Megan Sandell from the Children's Health Watch. And together we worked to envision, to create, and to form the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign, which we're officially launching today. And I just say that for the 5 of us who came together to sort of plan and pull together this campaign, it's really been a labor of love and dedication and time. And I'm just really grateful for all the time and energy and the leadership that our partners, that Nan and Barbara, Ali and Megan, have put towards this campaign. And along the way, we've had the chance to learn from and partner with Ronnie Pollack and Lena O'Rourke, who I believe are here somewhere, both of whom have had tremendous experience and skill in building and winning successful campaigns. And then also along the way, we have partnered with and learned from powerful new allies. And they're somewhat new to us in the housing world, but they're certainly not new to the world of advocacy for low-income people. They are leaders in the health, education, anti-poverty, anti-hunger, civil rights, and faith-based communities. And each of them, many of whom you'll hear from today, helped us to shape and build and now launch this campaign. And I'm grateful for their hard work, their leadership, and their vision. So Opportunity Starts at Home is about recognizing how central housing affordability is to the outcomes of so many other sectors. And it's about combining these other sectors, combining our networks, combining our partners, our efforts to push the federal government to make the investments necessary to solve the affordable housing crisis. So now I think we're going to bring the lights down. And I'm going to invite you all to please take a look at this video that will tell you a little bit more about the campaign and its leaders. The affordable housing crisis has reached historic heights, most negatively impacting the lowest income people. Nationally, we have a shortage of over 7 million affordable homes available to the lowest income seniors, people with disabilities, and families with kids. So another way of looking at that is for every 100 of the lowest income families, there are just 35 homes affordable and available to them. This leaves the majority of the lowest income people paying far more for their rent than they can afford, driving them deeper into poverty.
Federal housing policies can play a big role in helping this crisis, but federal housing assistance is chronically underfunded and currently faces unprecedented threats. Only 1 out of 4 families that qualify for federal housing assistance will actually get help. And this is unacceptable, especially considering the clear evidence that housing is pivotal in many areas. Housing touches virtually every aspect of life. And despite the magnitude of the problem, it is not yet a national priority. So the idea behind the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign is that various sectors are going to have to come together to push for federal policies that protect and expand affordable housing. This work cannot be done by housing advocates alone.
That's why we need and are launching this new campaign. We need something beyond what's been done in the past. We need a broader-based campaign. We need leaders, people who are active in a broad array of endeavors, from healthcare to jobs to employment to community development. We need people across the political spectrum, and they need to come together and really help the public get a deeper understanding of the severity of the problem and why it should be elevated, in my view, as a national priority. And in doing that, to help motivate policymakers to step up to the plate and take the stronger actions that are needed.
We decided to join the multi-sector housing campaign because we recognize that there are so many issues that affect the health of individuals that we simply can't isolate ourselves in the stovepipe of healthcare alone. It is affected by and it affects so many other aspects of people's lives: education, income, environment, and so many other factors. And housing is one of the most important. Unless we step up and do it, we in the health community step up and join that effort, we're derelict ourselves. If we just simply concentrate only on the medical and healthcare side of things, we're losing both the opportunity and we're facing the danger of not succeeding. At which point, in healthcare, all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on a problem that requires so much more.
Housing is a critical part of the civil rights advocacy work. And so our goal as an organization is to reduce residential segregation wherever it exists. That's why it's necessary to have a federal policy landscape. We need a federal policy landscape to affirmatively enforce fair housing in a way in which all citizens are experiencing equal protection under the law, and we remove people from under the specter of social immobility. One's zip code should not determine their life's future. But racial inequities show up in all facets of life, and you cannot address inequities if you're not dealing with housing.
The Children's Defense Fund decided to be a part of the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign and project because we believe in ending child poverty, and we believe that this campaign will have a tremendous boost in increasing access to housing for children and families across America. And without that access, we don't believe that we can really address child poverty. This is not just about housing, it is about income inequality, it's about racial disparities, and it is about the future of America and whether or not all children have equal opportunity to advance their futures.
Housing is crucially important to our sector of work. We're an anti-hunger organization, and when people can't afford their housing, that means that they can't afford adequate food. When rent's too high and they have to pay rent, they don't buy enough food, or if they're buying enough food, they fall behind on rent and they're going to be evicted.
I taught for years at a place where kids felt lucky that they were able to move out of their cars. I remember one of my students came back after getting into affordable housing, and his mom brought him back so that I could, just give him a hug, and he was so excited. He says, "There's grass, there's grass in front of our house," because he was used to a sidewalk. He was used to sleeping on the street. That means that little boy is going to be able to concentrate on his homework. He's going to be able to participate in class. He'll be singing his ABCs. They're better students. They're going to achieve more. That home is the center of their universe.
People who are housed are not homeless. We know we're going to need to solve the housing affordability crisis if we're going to end homelessness in our nation. The Opportunity Starts at Home campaign has brought together some of the leading national organizations in many sectors, organizations that are ready to combine voices and expertise. The campaign was founded by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, National Alliance to End Homelessness, Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, Make Room, and Children's Health Watch, along with a steering committee including Catholic Charities USA, Children's Defense Fund, Community Catalyst, Food Research and Action Center, NAACP, National Alliance on Mental Illness, National Association of Community Health Centers, National Education Association, and Unidos US.
Safe, decent, affordable homes are a foundation for opportunity. Every organization on the steering committee that's joined this campaign understands how central housing affordability is to them achieving their goals.
No one organization can hold the magic wand to a solution. All of us bring value and voice to the table.
We believe in the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign because it is a multi-sector campaign. You cannot solve affordable housing without bringing in education and child welfare and healthcare access and child advocates, because we're all impacted by the crisis of affordable housing in America.
To learn more about the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign and ways you can take action, please visit our website at opportunityhome.org.
So now I'd like to invite Bill Faith, the Executive Director of Cohio, to the stage to introduce our next speaker.
Hi, I'm Bill Faith. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition on Homelessness and Housing Ohio. It's great to be here. It's great to be part of this national campaign. This is kind of an all-hands-on-deck strategy. And when I think about it, that's, when we win, that's what we got. We got lots of people joining together to make a difference. And we have, to get this thing started, we need all states on board, but we're starting with 7 who have key members of Congress and are going to help us launch this Opportunity Starts at Home effort. Folks from California, people from Oregon, people from Idaho, Utah, New Jersey, Maine, and my home state of Ohio, which is really a good state. And I'm pleased to be helping to launch this effort, and I'm pleased to welcome our speaker this morning. I can't think of anybody who's better at talking about the intersections of many different issues and the multi-sector, issues that interplay with affordable housing. I often talk about our role in advocacy is so critically important because most politicians don't wake up every day and say, what can I do to help address the housing crisis? But our speaker this morning is an exception to that. And he gets this intersection. When I think about all of the things he does in the multi-sector arena, he's been a persistent fighter for helping people save their homes, for helping stand up for civil rights, for helping stand up for immigrants, for helping stand up for health care, for women's rights, against the NRA, and not just lately. He's a ranking member, he is the ranking member of the Senate Banking Committee, where he stands up against the big banks who want to get out from accountability. You may not know this, but he's a graduate of The Ohio State University, so OH. He lives in Cleveland with his Pulitzer Prize winning, extremely talented wife, Connie Schultz. So please welcome our senior senator from Ohio, Sherrod Brown.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. All right, thank you. Good to be here. Bill Faith and his extremely talented wife, Barb Pop, thank you for the work that you do, and they are a great team. And Bill Faith is just one of the heroes in Ohio fighting for people that don't have the voice and the privilege that a lot of other people have. And I'm so honored to be introduced by him and to have known Bill for decades now, decades, man. Wow. So this is my real voice. I'm not sick. I don't smoke. I just talk this way. And there, my wife that he mentioned and I were at an event in a room about half this size. And there was a little stage and there were no tables and chairs and everything. This is a true story, and everybody sort of packed together. And I started to talk. I took the microphone, 3 or 4 of us were at the front, and I was going to talk for 4 or 5 minutes, and this guy turns to my wife, whom she had never seen before, and he says, I hate that guy's voice. I said, really? He said, yeah, when that guy speaks, she leans, he says, that guy speaks, it's like fingernails on a blackboard. Connie said, I like his voice. And he said, you like that guy's voice? She said, yeah, you know when I really like it? And he said, when? And she goes like this and leans in. He leans in. So I really like it when he wakes me up in the middle of the night and says, I love you, baby. So, true story. I'm sorry you've had to hear it again, Faith, but it is a true story. Diane Yotel, thank you for the work that you do. She's been terrific working with our office. One thing to remind people of, Bill just said it's called the Banking Committee, actually, and he knows this. But people have forgotten because of what the committee does. It's actually called the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee. And since, I will not be partisan today, but since the Republicans took over the Senate, housing and urban affairs have just been jettisoned. We don't have hearings except, to confirm Ben Carson or something. We don't have hearings, we don't discuss housing. The only thing that this committee does that has to do with housing is undercut fair housing and doing things in the wrong direction. So if, again, one more partisan moment for a second, kind of partisan, is if the Democrats win the Senate next year and I'm chairman of that committee, the committee is going to be banking, housing, and urban affairs. And you as the Low-Income Housing Coalition, the important role you play just cannot be underestimated. I mean, I look at, I know you're going to honor tonight Matthew Desmond. Matthew Desmond, when his book When Evicted came out, and I have suggested to pretty much all my colleagues, I've given copies of that book to some, as I have the $2 a day. I'll talk about that in a moment. And how important it is, and I invited, I never met before, I invited Matthew Desmond to come and meet with a group of senators, and when he signed his book to me, which I paid for, I might add, which he signed his book to me, he wrote home equals life. And I don't think that people that have my job and my title, or people that have decent incomes and live in nice sections of town, I don't think they think enough about what that means, home equals life, because if someone's evicted, if someone's foreclosed on, their whole life's upside down. And you know that, because you've seen, some of you have probably had that happen to you, or certainly you know people that have, you live in neighborhoods, you've had, my neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio, I was at NHS yesterday, Neighborhood Housing Services in Cleveland, or those of you from Cleveland know all about that on Broadway. I live in that zip code, and that zip code, 44105, that zip code in 2007 had more foreclosures than any zip code in the United States of America. My wife and I live in, it's not a gated community, it's a relatively new housing, 15-year-old homes, priced between $100,000 and $200,000, not expensive, but nice, livable neighborhood. But outside of our neighborhood, I drive a half a mile in any direction, and it's urban blight still because of what happened in 2001 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And in Ohio, for 14 years, from 98 to 2011, we had more foreclosures every year than the year before. That's partly a declining economy and industrial manufacturing base, but it's partly the behavior of the banks and the behavior of the mortgage companies and Countrywide and all that, and refis and all the things that happen. You have a major economic advisor to the president now saying that refinancing was good for the economy back then. I mean, that's how out of touch they are. It also says to me how none of them have ever had their house foreclosed on. None of them has ever been evicted. And so one of the things that's important to do, and what I urge you to do, as you talk to members of Congress, as you invite them to your organizations and where you work and to your neighborhoods, talk to them, tell them the story about what an eviction looks like. Tell them the story about a foreclosure, what happens to a family. First thing, their income declines, or don't even talk about their mortgage resetting. Just talk about their income declines. One of them, the husband, wife, one of them is cut back to part-time. They end up having to give their animal away. They have to give their pet away because they can't afford the vet's bill. My son-in-law was up they live in Columbus, he was up visiting over Thanksgiving, and he was out jogging in our neighborhood, and he saw a little dog that he brought home because he has little kids, and this dog had pretty clearly probably been put out because they didn't know, they couldn't afford it, and it was in that neighborhood. And this dog had not been beaten, it was hungry, but I mean, that's the first thing that a family does. They give their pet away because they can't afford it. And then the other things that happen, and then they have to move to a new school district, and their kids, their 11 and 12-year-old kids don't get their own room anymore, and then all the downward spiral, and they have to give things away. I mean, tell those stories. You know them better than I do. Tell those stories when you meet members of Congress. I think in the end, that's probably the most important thing you can do to show them what that means. And you know the ripple effect it has the ripple of the downward spiral for a family, the ripple effect it has in a neighborhood when my house, I'm able, luckily enough, to pay the mortgage. The house next door has been foreclosed, and then you know how that all happens, and then the value of all the homes declines. When I was at NHS 2 days ago in Cleveland, yesterday, you know the number 1 out of 4 people who rent in the United States pay half their income in rent. You know that. Well, in Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, now kind of tied as the largest county in the state with the one that Bill lives in, Franklin. Cuyahoga County, 1.2 million people. The city of Cleveland is the center of the county. 1 out of 4 people overall in Cuyahoga County, homeowners and renters, 1 out of 4 pay at least half their income in rent. And what does that mean? As Matthew Desmond said, he said the rent eats first. You can't do anything because if you don't pay your rent and you're evicted, everything else goes wrong. So the rent eats first. The rent eats before food. The rent eats before taking care of something for your child. Whatever it is, the rent eats first. And the situation that puts the family in. And we know that home ownership is the crucial rung on the ladder of opportunity, and we have pulled that out from under people. I think of another book I mentioned earlier by Catherine Eden and Luke Schaefer called $2 a Day, and how many Americans literally live on $2 a day, scrounging. They're some of the most, the sort of stereotypes people have about poverty in this country, race and poverty and all the stereotypes we have. One of them is about the poor generally. Well, you read this book, $2 a Day, and you will be so impressed at the incredible entrepreneurship and resolution, and I'm searching for words here, that people show that are living in that kind of poverty, how they stay alive and how they fight back, their survivalist instincts and brilliance in some cases on figuring out how to feed their kids when they have no advantages in life. One story is a woman named Ray in Cleveland. When Ray gets a job at Walmart, she excels. She became two times she was cashier of the month at Walmart. She couldn't afford a house for her and her daughter, so she works extra shifts whenever she can. She lives with people she considers relatives. Some are just, Uncle Jane, or Aunt Jane, not Uncle Jane, Aunt Jane, sorry about that. They live in an overcrowded, Ray lives, because she has so little money, lives in an overcrowded, unsanitary house with intermittent running water, intermittent electricity. One day she misses work because someone in the house with whom she's living, of the 7 or 8 people in the house, one of them took the car out and drove doing whatever and left the house brought the car back with pretty much no gas. So Ray couldn't get to work that day. She got fired on the spot. She had been cashier of the month 2 times in a row, but there's always some other Ray that Walmart can hire. There's always somebody else in line that is willing to accept those work conditions in that way, those wages. So why keep Ray? Because she missed work one day. Think about the many layers of that story. There's the fact that Ray is not paid nearly enough, in spite of Walmart bragging about raising its minimum wage to whatever it raised its minimum wage, $11 an hour. The fact that she's not paid enough for the work she puts in. The fact she has no paid leave. I tell you another sorry I interrupt my stories with other stories. I was at a dinner in Cincinnati about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and there was it was an AFL-CIO dinner, and there was a group of women, all middle-aged women, probably half white, half people of color, but all middle-aged women sitting at the front table. And I was talking to somebody next to me about them, and he said, those are custodians. They just negotiated and signed their first union bargaining contract with Service Employees International Union. 1,200 custodians negotiated an agreement with the downtown Cincinnati business owners. They clean the offices in all the downtown Cincinnati office buildings. And so there was one seat there, and I sat down, and I turned to the woman next to me. I said, "What's it mean to have a union now that you signed your first contract today?" And she said, "I'm 51 years old. This is the first time I've ever had a paid 1-week vacation." So think how many people you work with, how many people that are lower income people in housing that's often substandard, in housing they often can't quite afford. Think how many of them never get a paid, certainly don't get maternity leave or paternity leave. They may not even get any sick days. They get no day. If their child's sick, do they send their child to school and go to work? Or do they keep their child home and give up the income that day, which pushes them right below an ability to do what they have to do every week? Or if they get sick, they just go to work if they're sick, because they just work through it, which also is likely to make other people. I mean, all of those kinds of things. But that's the situation Ray was in. Ray could not afford to live closer to her job because she had to find the job. I mean, there's a book called The Color of Law that just came out, some of you have read, that really show this, how particularly African Americans and Latinos, not nearly as many in my part of the world as some in my part of the country, but how they had to live much further at work, because this is the only neighborhood where African Americans can live, even though the auto plant now has moved to a suburb, and you're just out of luck. So all of the things that we've done there. And you just think of the cascade of effects that the lack of housing has on her life and the life of Ray's daughter. She loses her job, her dream of a steady job, a safe place to build a life for her toddler daughter. All of that fall further out of reach if she loses that home, if she's evicted, if she's foreclosed on. So I ask you to make sure you tell your stories that way. Tell the stories of your own life, tell the stories of the Rays that you know and the people that you know. Tell the stories of its effect on children. Tell the stories of all of those stories. 11 million households in this country are paying over half their income at rent. You know that. Tell members of Congress when you meet them, or state legislators, and ask if they don't want to meet with you, insist, and get a group of people to come to their offices. Here they're busy maybe, but they come home and meet with them. But to think about what Pope Francis, when he ascended to the papacy, he said he admonished his parish priests to go out and smell like the flock, which all the biblical connotations. How important it is that members of Congress, see how people live, how that they go into these rental units, that they talk to people that live there, that they talk to their advocates like you. How important that is. President Lincoln, when he would during the Civil War, his staff would tell him, stay in the White House, win the war, free the slaves, preserve the Union. And Lincoln said, no, I got to go out and get my public opinion baths. Make sure that your elected officials get those public opinion baths. And I'll close with one of my favorite stories about activism. John Lewis, whom most of you know or know of. John Lewis, congressman for 32 years now from Atlanta. John Lewis, who was the youngest person to speak at the March on Washington. And keep in mind, the March on Washington is called the March on Washington for Jobs and Economic Opportunity, not just the March on Washington, where Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech. John Lewis, who was probably beaten up, most civil rights activists will say John was beaten up more than any civil rights leader, any civil rights activist in the country. And John was, starting when the buses were firebombed, when he took the buses from Washington to Mississippi, and not ending, but beaten up in Selma, all that. And John and I and another senator named Tim Scott from South Carolina. The three of us led a delegation to honor to mark Selma's 50th anniversary. President Obama met us there, but he didn't want to ride with us on the plane. So he took his own plane, I understand. So anyway, John and I, and we were all on this plane, and I sat down with John for a minute. Now think about this. Now, John Lewis, born in 1940, this is 2015 when we went on the 50th anniversary of Selma. Now, John Lewis was telling me that the year before, the spring before, he was the speaker, the graduation speaker at Ole Miss. Imagine. John Lewis, when he was a kid, think he would be the graduation speaker at Ole Miss, which was quite segregated in those days. So John tells the story at Ole Miss that he was recounting to me on the plane. He said when I was 13 or 14, I went to, he grew up on a chicken farm outside a little town called Troy, Alabama. Didn't have much money, had very loving parents, grandparents, but he didn't have a car, his family, so they took the bus into Troy to buy some things one day, and John goes in with his parents and goes into the bus station, and he looks around, he says to his mom and dad, what is all that? John was 13 or 14 in the mid-50s. He said, what does all that mean? On the drinking fountains, colored only, white only. What does that mean on the bath, on the restrooms? Coloreds and whites only, coloreds only. And his parents said, John, don't ask questions, don't make trouble. And of course they said that. Then he said that's not good enough for John Lewis with his very fast-moving, good brain. He said to his grandparents, well, what does this mean, Grandma and Grandpa? Colored only, white only. And his grandparents said, John, don't ask questions, don't make trouble. So John says, when I was 17, I met Rosa Parks. And when I was 18, I met Martin Luther King. And I went up to them and I told that story. And they both said, John, listen, ask questions, make trouble, make good, necessary trouble. So your job is always to ask questions, make trouble, make good, necessary trouble. This world's going to change. We're going to change the direction of this country, and you're going to be a big part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Thank you so much for those moving comments. Wouldn't it be great to have the entire Senate full of characters like Senator Brown? Thank you again for having us here today. Hello, everybody. My name is Rich Hooks Wayman, and I'm with the Children's Defense Fund here in Washington, D.C. And I arrived home the other day and took off my coat when I heard a ruckus from my children's bedroom, and I went running in, and there were my 12-year-old twins in a full heated argument with each other, and around them were playing my younger children, my 2-year-old son and my 3-year-old daughter. And the kids were arguing, and I just said, pipe it down, time to move it across, let's divide and get rid of this argument. And they quieted down, and I left the room, and all of a sudden there was another ruckus. And this time I walked in, and it was my 2- and 3-year-old. They were trying to get the backpack away from each other, going back and forth. And the 3-year-old girl slammed it against her and got it from the 2-year-old boy. And my 2-year-old son said to her, "Shut up, idiot," and very quickly said, "And you're a poopy butt." Now, I could have been peeled off the ceiling, right? So as the father of a 2-year-old, where is he learning these words? It took him a nanosecond, a split second, for him to hear the word idiot during an argument of the 12-year-olds and find out that it was a powerful word that could stop things, including his daddy, because I had no reasonable explanation of what to do with this. So as parents of children, we often know that things are out of our control and that our children are always watching, always listening, and always learning. Research tells us that the first 4 years of life are some of the periods of greatest and most significant brain development. And what we've learned is that actually half of our intelligence potential is developed by the age of 4. As child advocates and as parents and as grandparents, we know that positive child development is linked to a sense of security and safety and predictability and patterns. It's how kids learn and grow and thrive. And we also know on the flip side that toxic stress has an adverse impact on the brain architecture, which has lifelong negative outcomes in regards to behavior, mental health, relationships, and learning. So I share all of that to explain why I, a child advocate, am here today advocating for affordable housing. I have to ask ourselves a question. What are we doing? What are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to our communities? What are we doing to our nation when children are denied access to safe and stable homes? The United States cannot say it cherishes our children when millions of extremely poor children each year face homelessness and a lack of housing stability. We must do our part to have housing and community development that is both affordable and accessible. The Children's Defense Fund is a proud member of the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign because we recognize that our work to end child poverty cannot be accomplished if children do not have access to safe and stable homes. Our nation has failed to create infrastructure and financing to lift millions of children out of homelessness, deep poverty, or prevent housing instability related to evictions. Today, we are joining with others in this group in this cause and look forward to reinvigorating a debate on housing in the nation. We all have an opportunity to help children, and today, child defenders should do what they can and join the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign. It is my great honor to be here today to welcome you to this campaign and to say that we're all in. It is also now my honor to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Marvin Owens, who is the Senior Director of the NAACP's Economic Department. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marvin Owens, and I serve as the Senior Director for Economic Programs at the NAACP. Before I go forward, I want to shout out to my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, since Ohio is represented here. The NAACP is our nation's oldest and largest civil rights and human rights organization, and we see this Opportunity Starts at Home campaign as a critical part of the ongoing work to ensure that all people have access to clean, affordable, and safe housing. I think it's important to note that this year marks the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. And it's important to also note that the Fair Housing Act legislation is actually entitled the Civil Rights Act of 1968. And the grassroots leadership of the NAACP was intimately involved in the efforts to pass that legislation, and here's why. The NAACP has always understood that there is an economic intersection between housing and civil rights. That housing is a key component to creating economic opportunity and really beginning to provide opportunity for everyone, everywhere. But 50 years later, unfortunately, the conditions and forces that made fair housing necessary are still in place today. That economic discrimination is still real, and the residual impact on the poor and on people of color has been devastating. And that's why we believe this work is so important, that the lack of access to housing not only endangers our nation's future, it endangers the stability and strength of our communities, but it also endangers our democracy. So on behalf of the NAACP and our board and our leadership, we're delighted to be a part of this unprecedented coalition and stand in full support of this important work. So thank you very much for having us. It's now my pleasure to introduce Ali Solis, President and CEO of Make Room.
Thank you so much, Marvin, and really excited to be here on this kind of dreadfully cold and dreary day. How much optimism came from Senator Brown, and I think we need that right now. As Marvin mentioned, I'm Ali Solis. I'm the CEO and president of a relatively new national organization called Make Room, and I'm honored to be part of the steering committee that brings Opportunity Starts at Home to you today. Today, I have the great role of sharing with you this new website, which we really view as a digital platform, an online community where everybody can really engage with this campaign. Because as most of you may know, online advocacy has a core component of our strategy. And the reason for that is that with almost 80% of all Americans in possession of a smartphone, we believe that it is key to providing access and unlocking civic engagement. Low-income families, as we heard from the senator, often can't take a day off to go meet with their council member or their member of Congress. But the power that is in their hands, in their very palm, through their phones, is something that we think might be a game changer to get more lower-income people engaged. So we joined the coalition in part to lead this strategy, this digital strategy for the website, and I'm excited today to give you a brief tour of the website. So can we move to the next slide? There we go, great. So the goals for the website are the same goals for the campaign: to educate people about the intersection between housing and many, many other social issues, where working together, we can really lift people up and create a better outcome for all of us. Throughout the site, there are sector solutions that really help you navigate the content across the 8 different various sort of issue sectors that are coming together in this campaign, including education, civil rights, as you can see on the screen as some examples. You'll also see ways to take action, because that's what this is about, ways to empower and engage people that are going to be joining us from all different sectors. You will always see ways to take action on almost every page of our site, as well as to take action that's at the top of the page, which I know may be hard for you to see here, but hopefully you can look at your phones and be able to quickly mobilize from that aspect as well. The next slide, this is a sliced-up view of what the homepage looks like, so I can highlight just a few things. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see that we are very active on social media, and that you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of the various social media sites. The top navigation bar will also take you to press releases, more information on state campaigns that you'll hear more about in a little bit, as well as an ability to contact us directly, which is really important, because this campaign is about collectively mobilizing all of our partners across the country. Across the main navigation, there are the principal categories of content, including the various sectors, which I'll show you about more in a minute. There's also a section on resources, a searchable library of all of the content on the site. There's a section about us and more details. It's really meant to give you the resources and tools that you need, regardless of the sector that you come from, to make it easy for you to engage with us. At the bottom of every page, there's also a newsletter sign-up. This is meant to be a communications hub, a way to share information and hear from you directly about the things that you care about and how we can improve that ability to provide more resources. So next slide. For every sector that we are highlighting, 8 will be launching today and many more to come. We've created a landing page that is designed to help educate our audience and make it as easy as possible to take action. Each page is divided into 3 different sections. What you need to know. You can look for an orange button that will take you to fact sheets and detailed information on those various sectors. Under that is a section for how you can get involved. And it gives you very specific actions that you can take right there. You can send a letter, you can send an email, you can make a tweet, etc. Each sector will have its own targeted both messaging as well as relevant actions, designed to spread the message and break down the silos between housing and the various other aspects. Below that, you'll also find more resources if you want to learn more about a particular issue. Because partly we're also trying to educate housers, right, to understand what's happening in these other sectors. The fact sheets great. So the fact sheets for every sector have been developed to provide you with information on these intersections between housing and these other sectors, and about how the lack of affordable housing impacts renters' ability to thrive. So what are the intersections between these important causes? If you're someone who cares about education, why should you care about housing? If you care about civil rights in our country, how do we make those connections for those that may not have thought of themselves as housing advocates and make it easy for them to see that? So each of these fact sheets will provide infographics, and they'll be downloadable in a PDF form, again, to make it an easy resource so that you can share these facts with your partners and with your networks and help us really grow this online community. Next slide, great. So finally, and most importantly, there are over 20 actions that supporters can take. Whenever you click on a Take Action card, the Take Action page, or from one of the various sector pages, you'll be able to send a letter, a tweet, or to share your story. Part of creating a community is also learning about the many people that are struggling with this issue. And so we're trying to create a national story bank, and we're making it easier for folks to do that. After you submit, there are sections directly below where you can click on the Twitter button to tweet an infographic in just one click. Everybody's busy. We want to make it simple for folks to take multiple actions. You can choose lots of additional actions to take, and the site has more capabilities for users to advocate that we'll be rolling out in the months ahead. So please do keep an eye out for the various changes and the growing parts of the website. Before I finish, I just want to remind you that the site is now live, and we'll hope that you'll take a tour, perhaps when the speakers are done here. Play around with it. It is opportunityhome.org now or later, and really, sign up, get engaged, be part of our community. Please share, 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 and thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of this exciting campaign, and it is my now distinct pleasure to introduce my good friend, Nan Groman, who leads the National Alliance to End Homelessness. So thanks so much.
Okay, don't look at the website quite yet. Just wait, wait just a little bit. I have to tell you, on behalf of the staff and the board of directors of the National Alliance to End Homelessness, we are so incredibly excited about Opportunity Starts at Home and the possibility of really beginning to plant the seeds for solutions that go to scale to address the affordable housing crisis in our country. It's been amazing to work with this team and the new groups of new organizations that we haven't worked closely with before in a new way. We're just beginning, and everyone is going to be involved, many, many other organizations. This is just the steering committee that we're introducing today. But it really has been a wonderful experience. And I'm going to introduce you to the groups that have been planning this so far. So I'm going to ask you to hold your applause, which I know will be thunderous until I've introduced everybody. Diane, Bill, Rich, Marvin, and Allie, could you all come back up? So the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, Make Room, Children's Defense Fund, and NAACP are all on the steering committee. And I want to introduce you to the other organizations that are on the steering committee. Andrew Sperling from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Jim Wheel from Food Research and Action Center, Harry Lawson from the National Education Association, Dan Hawkins from the National Association of Community Health Centers, Agatha So from Unidos US, Allison Bovlamans from Children's Health Watch, Lucretia Cobbs from Catholic Charities USA, and Ron Pollock. And also Community Catalyst, which couldn't be here today, is also a member of our steering committee. So thank you all. And of course, in addition to the steering committee, they are not our only partners. We also, as Bill said, have the 7 state organizations that are organizing similar multi-sector campaigns to press for the goal of the America Starts at Home. So joining Bill Faith from Ohio, can I welcome on stage Greg Payne from the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition, Tara Rollins from the Utah Housing Coalition, Arnold Cohen from Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, Alejandra Cerno Rios from the Idaho Asset Building Network, Allison McIntosh from the Oregon Housing Alliance, and Lisa Hershey from Housing California, and many more states to follow, I am sure. And very, very importantly, I want to introduce you also to the national campaign staff, Mike Kaprowski, who's the campaign director, and Chantel Wilkinson, who's the campaign coordinator. Please join me in thanking this powerful group of advocates and organizations who are committed to working together and with all of you to ensure that everyone in our nation has a home that they can afford. And now, please join me in welcoming our wonderful colleague, also on the steering committee, Barbara Sard, Vice President for Housing Policy at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities.
Very crowded stage. As Diane said earlier, this has been a long time coming. It's very exciting for it to finally be public and live today, but we couldn't be here if it were not for a group of national funders sharing our vision, sharing our hope, knowing that this is the time to really try to make a difference in solving America's housing problems. That support has come through a collaborative called the Funders for Housing and Opportunity, and I would like to invite Jeannie Fakati-Selassie, hopefully I did that all right, to join us on the stage. And just so you all know, the 9 foundations that currently make up the FHO Collaborative that we hope will be growing so that there will be more money to invest in these kinds of activities are the Annie E. Casey Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the JPB Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, Melville Charitable Trust, and the Oak Foundation. So let's give everyone here and our funding partners a great hand.
So I'm thrilled by all of this. I hope you are as well. We are at a tipping point in this crisis, and we can end homelessness, and we can end housing poverty. And what we've been working for so many years is to build the political will to fund the solutions at the scale necessary. And the good news is that as housers, we're not alone in this work anymore. We're being joined by incredibly powerful new allies who will work with us to build that political will. And we've built this strong, powerful coalition because together we all recognize that if we care about poverty or economic mobility, if we care about inequality or integration, if we care about healthcare, education, transportation, nutrition, if we care about local economies and creating jobs, then the solutions start with home. So we hope each one of you will join us in this campaign here today and back in your communities. There are a few actions we want you all to take. If you're on Twitter, we would love for you to get out your phone right now and follow Opportunity Starts at Home. If you're not on Twitter, you really should get on Twitter soon. But if you're not, there's other things you can do as well, like sign up for our newsletter, check out the website, as Ali said. There's a call to action that we are going to distribute widely to show the breadth of support for affordable homes. So join us in this campaign, and please join me again in thanking our partners for joining us here.